And this man, I've been following his career. I think he's a vampire because he looks the exact same as he's looked every time I've seen him. He's not aging. I don't know what's going on, but let me welcome right now. He's in one of my favorite shows. It's called Bosch. Season 7 is available on Amazon Prime right now, where he plays Chief Irvin Irving on Bosch.
That's really his name, yes.
Chief Irvin Irving. Let me welcome the one and only Lance Reddick.
Thank you, Candace. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Let me start there. You know, I was mentioning where most people may know you from is The Wire, which is one of my producer's favorite shows. One of his is in his top 5, The Wire. He forced me to watch it. I was not one of these adopters because in my mind, Lance Reddick, I saw The Corner. So I don't need to watch The Wire, right? Because Black people, drugs, I don't need to do that. When you got the role, and now it's iconic, right? This series is iconic, and you know, I watched it maybe 10 years after the fact. So now I'm like, oh, Michael B. Jordan's in it. Oh, look at that. Look at
he was 14.
I know, he's a baby. Look at Idris Elba. Oh, look at, you know. So I'm seeing all of these people now, including you, and I'm like, all right, the acting's amazing, but you're from Baltimore. Was it trying to go into this space for you?
Well, it was more weird going home to work. And so it was more that. But as far as being triggering, like I didn't grow up in West Baltimore. I grew up in the suburbs.
Oh, excuse me.
All my dad's family's in West Baltimore. But I didn't grow up there. So all my cousins and aunts and uncles are from West Baltimore. But it was more, it's funny because I feel like I learned a lot about Baltimore, about particularly police culture from doing the show.
You know, it's interesting, as you're talking, my father's from Newark, which is a similar city to Baltimore. I would go to visit my grandmother and my cousins, but I was raised in the suburbs, went to, Catholic school. You went to the Friends School, which is,
Quaker school.
Quaker, hoity-toity, very, So it's interesting. Many Black people have this kind of dual life where we may visit places, but not be from those places, but understand them through a different kind of lens.
Yeah.
How did that duality impact you growing up? Because as you're mentioning, you didn't grow up in the heart of Baltimore with all of the trappings and the violence and the...
Yeah, I didn't grow up in the hood, no. So for me, it was, man, that's an interesting question that I don't even know where to start with that one. There was, I didn't know it while I was growing up. It really wasn't until I was almost in my 30s that I realized I grew up with kind of an identity crisis. Because I grew up pretty much starting in junior high school. I grew up in a predominantly white environment academically. We were the first Black family to move into our neighborhood. We moved when I was like 10 years old. And so, people talk about, I hate using this kind of millennial language, but people talk about microaggressions. So, as a kid, all you want to do is fit in, So, I would go to my relatives, or I'd go, because my mother taught about Baltimore public school system. So she was a public school teacher. So, and my school year was always over about 3 weeks before hers. So for 3 weeks in June, I would be with my mother every day running around the schools that she was teaching at, because she was an instrumental music teacher. So she didn't have a homeroom of one school. And so I would get made fun of because of how I spoke. But then I was always kind of other in my kind of, I was going to say home environment, but at school, there was always kind of this sense of wanting to not have my Blackness be, constantly wanting to not have my Blackness be part of how people saw me. And it wasn't until I was an adult that I realized that there's no escaping.
That's so powerful, because many of our parents raised us to not have to, if you come through the civil rights era, you're like, you don't want your children to suffer that, right? So there was almost an erasure of that struggle, right? And a lot of our parents moved to the suburbs, and a lot of our parents wanted to not have to deal with the yoke of, oppression. But those microaggressions are even more damaging in some ways than confronting the N-word, or confronting somebody burning a cross in your yard, or confronting whites only, coloreds only, they're almost.
And don't get me wrong, I get called N-word in Baltimore growing up. I mean, that happened. It's not like it didn't happen. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so take us through that. I mean, because I feel like we're in a space right now where a lot of folk are having an epiphany about things. Like, this country's at an inflection point. And, for a man that navigates these spaces, you've done so quite well, both in your personal life and through your art. Where are we? And do you see us actually, coming together meaningfully?
Wow. Well, first of all, let me speak to how well I've navigated, the landscape of race, because it's been a constant struggle. Even, so I went to drama school at Yale. So, and when I graduated, Paul Giamatti was in my class. So Paul was just smarter and more talented than everybody else from day one. He just was. But I was that guy who would outwork you. So I was up at 5:30 every morning. The first thing I did was affirmations. I read from the Bible, from the Tao, and from Sun Tzu. I do some script work. Then I'd go running. I worked out every morning. And then I would come home, make my lunch, make my breakfast, shove my bike in the back of the car, take my daughter to school, because my daughter was 3 years old. And so my whole thing was working harder to be better. And it was, in drama school is a bit of a, it's tough, because you have to be very courageous all the time, and you're always getting critiqued, and you're always worrying about what other people think of you. But by the same token, it's also, compared to the real world, it's a pretty safe space. So, I got to play Mark Anthony in drama school. I got to play Leontes, the lead in The Winter's Tale. I got to be Gloss. I got to do all this great stuff. And then I get out of drama school, and then it's like, the black, what's available is the black guy. So, during pilot season, I have all my white classmates complaining about how busy they were every day going to auditions. If I averaged an audition a week, like if I had 2 auditions a week, man, it was raining auditions for me, And so for me, it's been a war in terms of getting to where I am now. It's been a bit of a war of attrition, where the thing that's kept me going is just not wanting to give up, and not giving up on who I am. But it's been tough.
So do you feel like you get typecast, as a stoic, authoritarian, you play a police chief in Wire, you're police chief now, maybe, you're politician in Bosch, but coming through that police space. John Wick, you're playing this, another authority figure. They're very
kind of. I mean, John Wick's departure. So it's tricky, because there's the cop thing, and there's the authority figure thing.
It's the same, for us watching, it's the persona, right? It's the person that's in charge. You have, command. We look at you, Lance Reddick, as the person that's going to be giving out orders and making stuff happen. Like you're that guy in these roles.
Well, yes, that's true. So the typecasting thing is a little tricky, because it's not just about race. Although for me, I feel like it is partly about race. I mean, when Fringe came along, it was one of those things where, it came right after The Wire. We shot the last season of The Wire in 2007. We wrapped in August. I was on a plane in September to Hawaii to shoot Lost, and then I got cast in Fringe in January. So, and I know that a lot of how I got cast in Fringe was because of because of The Wire, because it had reached the tip. You know, when The Wire first came out, except for Black people and left-wing intellectuals, nobody's watching. Nobody in the industry, you know, was really watching it, which was maddening because we were the lead into The Sopranos. So it's not like they weren't watching everything. You know what I mean? When it came to award season, it was crickets. You know, every single season. And it wasn't until the last season that suddenly everybody in Hollywood was talking about The Wire. So I know that that's really how I ended up getting royals. And then with Bosch, quite frankly, I almost said no. When it you know, I'd gone through pilot season, and really there wasn't anything for me after Fringe ended. And I was in the process of actually trying to develop a comedy for myself based on a Funny or Die skit that I did called Toys on Me, which I don't know if you've seen, but it's another.
But I know that you're funny as hell. I know that.
Well, that was crazy. That was crazy.
I was going to go with the question, but I want to hear this because, you know, Fringe was one of my favorite. This alternate universe timelines and all of this back and forth.
Interesting.
Woo, that show was everything. And, you know, I was sad when it ended as well. And I almost forgot that you were in it because to me, there's like this seamless Lance Reddick, as I mentioned, persona that kind of weaves through all of these iterations of yourself in these different places. I still see you. So I was going to ask you how much of that is you, and then what's the role that you would most want to play to break away? Which one of these characters is most Lance Reddick?
Wow. Believe it or not, probably of those characters, none. Of the characters that I've played in the last 10 years, probably the one that's closest to me, who I really am, is Sylvie's Love, when I played Tessa Thompson's father.
Come on now. So
yeah,
that was another.
That's
so
more.
Y'all better start watching some stuff. That's another movie that is not getting, in my opinion, the love that it deserves. It is so beautifully done. The acting is the writing.
Well, my only issue with how the movie was handled is, and I probably shouldn't say this because I want Amazon to demand me, is that it should have gotten a theatrical release, because it should have been eligible for Oscar nominations. Yes. I mean, Tessa should have gotten an Oscar nomination. I mean, she should have.
I mean, but they Amazon has an Oscar.
I know, but it never got any. It's not like, see, with streaming, they'll do a limited theatrical releases so that it can be eligible for Oscars. And Sylvie's Love didn't get that. So, that bothers me.
Yeah. It was so.
Because it's a beautiful film.
Okay, so that's close to you. You playing her dad.
That's more like me than any other character I think I've ever played.
Yeah. I mean, and again, you know, I know that you have range, so I'm just like, okay, all right. Well, so if you were handed a magic wand and you could play any role, what role would that be? Is there a role or an existing role that you'd like to play, or maybe something? I'm watching this Mr. In Between, and the star of it wrote it and he produced it, and I was like, no one would ever pick him to star in this or in anything. I think his name is Scott Riley or something.
Is that the Australian?
Yes, Australian in New Zealand.
Yeah. I've only seen the first season.
I'm like, who would? Oh, he wrote it and he produced it. Okay, that's what it's going to take to do a role like that, because he wouldn't have gotten cast in that role.
Well, also, I think casting is, well, first of all, why do you say that?
Because, you know, it's about a man who is a hitman who has a heart of gold, right? And so he's got these complex relationships with his friends, his daughter, his girlfriend, and he's loving to his dog, but he will kill you and bury you in the, you know, but physically he's not a specimen, you know. He's got like a little bit of a pot belly and some hips. He's bald. He's not sexy, you know.
Interesting.
Like you know how you're bald with pecs and everything. His body sucks. But it's, you know, like Hollywood is so caught up in this.
See, it's interesting that you say that, because when you said that, it threw me, because you know, watching the show, I never thought that at all. I never thought to question it, but I feel like that's a very American point of view, because Hollywood is such a town of typing as opposed to acting. Like, for example, I've watched a lot of, I don't know why, but I've gotten addicted to British crime dramas. And when you watch British shows, even the comedies, like people aren't typed. Do you know what I mean? It's all about the acting, because the tradition of acting, the tradition of the theater in the UK is so strong that it's completely seeped into its television and film. Whereas, you know, in a
you know,
you don't have to be that great of an actor to be a
right.
star in the United States. You just have to look a certain way.
Say it. You know, I'm looking at,
yeah,
without saying names, like, you know, Scarlett Johansson, without saying names, you know, I'm looking at people that have gotten Oscars, and you're like, you know, and I read a lot. So when I saw was that the Hunger Games, I was like, that's not who I pictured as ever, you know, as Katniss. No, and but she's getting Oscars and stuff, and I'm like, no. But then you have Elizabeth Moss, who just murders every role that she's in, and
she's a real actor,
and doesn't fit the description. You know, she's not Charlize Theron putting on, you know, ugly makeup or whatever to do a role. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying Elizabeth Moss is ugly. I'm saying she can act.
No. I did. That's not why I laughed. It was more about Charlize Theron. But go ahead.
But you know, I'm just, you know, I'm fascinated. I think we're in a space now where people are charting their own courses and doing their own thing, and I feel like art is starting to imitate life in a way that people are breaking free from all of these boxes that we've been placed in for time immemorial, and people are defining for themselves who they are and what they should look like.
Well, I have to say, to your point, working on kind of being in charge of the direction of my career and creating my own stuff has been something that I've been working on for a while. Unfortunately, I don't feel at liberty to talk about the couple of things that I'm in the process of trying to develop. All
right, Lance Reddick.
Yeah, sorry.
All right, so what's that role that you know, either imagine, or maybe it's a famous person that you'd like to play that you haven't?
Oh, wow. It's funny because I feel like I've been so fortunate, especially the past few years. I've gotten to play so many different things, and I've got so many great things coming up. I mean, the first season of Resident Evil that I just finished shooting, it's very different because I'm playing a scientist, so who's a father. But you know, it's interesting. I want to do Shakespeare, not just on stage, but on film. And as a matter of fact, one of the projects I'm trying to develop is a Shakespeare piece. But when you said that, the thing that came to my mind, which I'd forgotten about, is I've been wanting to play Bishop Desmond Tutu for a long time. Like that, he's one of my heroes.
See that?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that shall happen.